I stood at the entrance of the Grand Oak estate, watching her step out of a silver Mercedes. She wasn't alone. The man beside her wore confidence like a second skin. Tailored navy suit, Italian leather shoes, the kind of smile that told you he'd won something you didn't know was a competition. My family milled around the garden behind me, their laughter floating through the warm September air, like ghosts of simpler times. The valet took their keys. She smoothed down her dress, the red one I'd bought her in Paris 2 years ago, and linked her arm through his. They moved toward the estate's entrance like they were arriving at their own celebration. Her eyes found mine across the cobblestone driveway, and for a split second, something flickered there. Fear, maybe, or calculation. I didn't move, didn't smile, just watched. My cousin Thomas appeared at my elbow, champagne flute in hand. "Boss, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," I said quietly. "Just the past coming to collect." She reached the steps, her heels clicking against stone. The man's hand rested on the small of her back, the exact spot where my hand used to rest when we'd walk into rooms together. She'd taught him that, probably. Taught him all the little intimacies that once belonged to us. "Liam," she said, her voice carrying that practiced brightness she used when she was nervous. "I didn't think you'd already be here." "It's my family reunion, Natalie. Where else would I be?" The man extended his hand. "You must be the husband. Natalie's told me so much about you. I'm Julian." I looked at his hand like it was something dead, then slowly took it. His grip was firm, competitive. I matched it, held it a moment too long, watched his smile falter slightly. "Julian," I repeated, tasting the name. "Interesting. How do you two know each other again?" Natalie's laugh was wind chimes in a storm. Pretty, but wrong. "We're old friends, from college. I mentioned it last week, remember?" She hadn't mentioned it. We both knew that. "Right," I said. "Old friends. Well, Julian, since you're here, let me introduce you properly." I raised my voice, projecting across the garden. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Julian. He just started at my company last month. Junior analyst position. Been doing excellent work with the filing systems." The color drained from Natalie's face like water from a broken glass. Julian's hand went rigid in mine before I released it. "What?" Natalie whispered. "Didn't he mention?" I turned to Julian, my smile carved from ice. "When did you start again? 3 weeks ago? 4? Julian's jaw worked silently. Around us, my family had started to notice the tension. Conversations dying like dominoes falling. My Uncle Richard approached, hand extended toward Julian. "An employee. Well, any friend of Liam's is family here. How are you finding the work?" We... Julian looked at Natalie, then back at me. "There must be some confusion." "Is there?" I asked. "You're Julian Torres, right? Hired September 3rd through the temporary agency? Graduate degree in marketing from State University? Currently residing at 445 Parkside Avenue, apartment 12B. Natalie's breath came sharp and fast. "Liam, what are you—" "Or perhaps," I continued, my voice still pleasant, still calm. "You're a different Julian. One who didn't fill out employment paperwork. One who didn't provide references. One who didn't list his address and emergency contacts." I paused. The same address, coincidentally, where my wife's been spending her Tuesday and Thursday evenings. The ones she said were yoga classes. The garden had gone completely silent. Natalie grabbed my arm. "Can we please talk privately?" I looked down at her hand on my sleeve. The same hand that wore my grandmother's ring. The same hand that had held mine during our vows. The same hand that had apparently been holding his when she thought I wouldn't find out. "Of course," I said. "Julian, why don't you help yourself to refreshments? The temporary staff knows where everything is. You should feel right at home." I walked into the estate without looking back, knowing she would follow. She always did. That was the problem. She followed, but never toward me anymore. The library was empty, smelling of old leather and older money. My grandfather had built this room, lined these shelves with books he'd never read but wanted people to see. Appearances. Always appearances. Natalie shut the door behind us with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot. "You hired him?" Her voice shook. "You actually hired Julian? Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I turned to face her. "About the coffee shops? The late nights at the office that your assistant said you weren't at? The way you started putting your phone face down on every surface?" "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." I sat on the edge of grandfather's desk, arms crossed. "Tell me what I'm supposed to think when my wife brings another man to our family reunion." "To our family reunion, Natalie. Not a birthday party, not a casual dinner. The one event where we stand in front of everyone who raised us and we pretend we are still the people they believe we are." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I didn't know he'd be working for you. He told me he got a job at a startup. He lied, just like you've been lying." I laughed, and it hurt coming out. "You know what the funny part is? He applied to my company 3 weeks ago. Filled out every form himself. Never mentioned knowing you. Never mentioned knowing anyone named Natalie Carter. And I hired him because his resume was decent, and we needed temporary help in the analysis department. It was supposed to be over," she said quietly. "We were supposed to be done." "When did it start?" She looked at the floor. 4 months ago. At the charity gala, the one you couldn't attend because of the Tokyo deal." The Tokyo deal. I'd spent 2 weeks in Japan, finalizing the merger that would triple our company's value, worked 18-hour days, slept in conference rooms, called her every night to hear her voice because it was the only thing that made those sterile hotel rooms feel like home. "And tonight?" I asked. "Bringing him here tonight? That was what? A test? A power play?" I thought if I brought him as a friend, introduced him to everyone, it would prove that we're just friends, that there's nothing between us anymore. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were wet. "I wanted to be done with him, Liam. I swear I wanted to choose us." "Wanted," I repeated. Past tense. "I do want us. I don't know how to explain it." "Try." She moved to the window, looking out at the garden where Julian stood alone by the fountain, checking his phone like a lifeline. "He made me feel seen, like I wasn't just someone's wife or someone's trophy, like I was interesting for me. And I didn't. You were always working, always building, always planning the next deal, the next acquisition, the next—" She stopped. "I'm not blaming you. I know what I did. I know it was wrong. But you have to understand, I felt invisible. I thought about all the times I'd come home late, too tired to talk. All the dinners I'd missed. All the moments I'd chosen work over her because I was building something. Building us a future, a foundation, security." "I see you now," I said softly. Very clearly. The statement hung between us like smoke. "What happens now?" she asked. I stood, smoothing my suit jacket. "Now you go back out there. You smile. You introduce Julian to my family as exactly what he is, my employee. And you spend the rest of this evening watching him realize that every Tuesday and Thursday wasn't love. It was scheduling. It was convenience. It was whatever he could get from a married woman who was stupid enough to think he'd actually want more. Liam, and Monday morning," I continued, "Julian will find a termination notice on his desk, not because he's bad at his job, but because I don't employ people who lack integrity, who lie on their applications by omission, who think they can have their cake and eat it too." You can't fire him for this. I can fire him for lying about knowing an employee's spouse. It's actually in the contract he signed, the one he clearly didn't read. I walked toward the door. But tonight? Tonight I want you to see his face when he realizes that the woman he's been sleeping with didn't tell him who I was, that she brought him into my world without warning him, that she used him as a pawn in whatever game she thought she was playing. I opened the door, then paused. You said he made you feel seen, Natalie. Let's see how he feels when everyone's looking at him. The rest of the evening played out like a symphony conducted by silence. I introduced Julian to every member of my family, each time mentioning his position at my company, each time watching his face tighten a little more. Natalie stayed by the bar, drinking champagne faster than she should, her eyes darting between us like a trapped animal looking for escape routes. My aunt pulled me aside near midnight. That boy your wife brought. He's not very friendly, is he? Barely said 2 words when I asked about his work. Some people aren't good at conversation, I said. And Natalie seems upset. She's not herself tonight. No, I agreed. She's not herself. Maybe she never was. The memory rises like a song I thought I'd forgotten. 7 years ago. A bookstore on Magnolia Street, rain drumming against windows. I ducked inside to escape the downpour, and there she was at the poetry section, water dripping from her umbrella, reading Mary Oliver like the words could save her. Do you believe that? I'd asked, pointing at the book. The part about the wild geese? She'd looked up, startled, then smiled. About letting the soft animal of your body love what it loves, every day. We talked for 3 hours. The rain never stopped, and neither did we. She told me about her job as a gallery assistant, about her dreams of curating her own exhibition someday. I told her about taking over my father's company, about wanting to prove I could make it something more than just a family legacy. You'll do it, she'd said with such certainty. I can tell. You've got that look, like you see the world differently than everyone else. I'd fallen in love right there, between poetry and promises, believing that someone who understood art could understand me, that someone who saw beauty in words would see value in silence, that someone who wanted to be more than she was would want to grow with me. We married 18 months later, small ceremony, just family and close friends. She wore a simple dress and wildflowers in her hair, looked at me like I was the only future she needed. When had that changed? Maybe it was gradual, so slow I didn't notice the distance growing. After the wedding, she'd stopped talking about the gallery, said she was waiting for the right opportunity. Meanwhile, I was building the company, hiring new people, expanding into international markets. Every success felt empty without her excitement to share it with. But whenever I came home with news, her smile seemed painted on. That's wonderful, honey, she'd say, already turning back to her phone, to her shows, to whatever occupied her when I wasn't there. I'd convinced myself it was temporary, that once the company stabilized, once I had more time, we'd reconnect, find that bookstore feeling again. But time doesn't wait for good intentions. And neither, apparently, did she. The shift was subtle at first. So subtle I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. Natalie started going out more. Gallery openings, she said. Networking events. Reconnecting with old friends from college. I encouraged it, actually. Thought it meant she was finally pursuing those dreams she'd shelved. How was the opening? I'd ask when she came home, sometimes near midnight. Inspiring, she'd say, but wouldn't elaborate. Would go straight to shower, washing the night off her skin like evidence. Her phone became a fortress. Password changed monthly. Notifications silenced. When it buzzed during dinner, she'd glance at it with an expression I couldn't read, something between guilt and excitement. Work? I'd ask. Just spam. You know how it is. But I didn't know, because my wife had become a stranger who wore familiar skin. The Tuesday and Thursday yoga classes started in June. She'd come home in athletic wear, hair damp, complaining about the difficulty of crow pose or warrior sequence. I thought it was good for her. Thought she seemed happier, more energized. I didn't know that 445 Parkside Avenue didn't have a yoga studio. It had a mid-rise apartment building with a doorman who would later, when questioned by my private investigator, remember a regular Tuesday and Thursday visitor. A woman in expensive athletic wear who never carried a yoga mat. The investigator's report had arrived 2 weeks before the reunion. Photographs, timestamps, license plate numbers. Julian Torres, 31, marketing consultant currently between jobs. They'd met at a gallery opening. That part was true. She'd been there alone because I was in meetings. He'd approached her, complimented her taste in art, asked if she wanted to get coffee. Just coffee. That's how it always starts. By the time I was in Tokyo, coffee had become dinner. Dinner became drinks. Drinks became apartment 12B on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, the nights I had standing poker games with my college friends, and wouldn't expect her home until late. The investigator had asked if I wanted him to continue surveillance. I'd said no. I'd seen enough, knew enough. The question was what to do with the knowing. Then Julian's resume crossed my desk. Julian Torres, graduate degree in marketing, looking for temporary work while he launched his consulting business. No mention of personal connections to anyone in the company. No disclosure of relationships that might constitute conflicts of interest. I'd looked at his photo. Professional headshot, expensive haircut, the kind of polished confidence that women probably found attractive. And I'd made a decision. Hire him, I told HR. Junior analyst, temporary contract, start immediately. They'd questioned the fit. He was overqualified for the position. But I was CEO. My word was law. So Julian Torres became my employee, and I waited to see how long it would take for Natalie to notice, to panic, to realize that the walls she thought protected her were made of glass. The distance between us became a canyon. We lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, but existed in different worlds. She'd lie beside me at night, her back turned, breathing carefully measured like someone pretending to sleep. I'd stare at the ceiling, counting the ways I'd failed without knowing when the failing began. We stopped having breakfast together. She'd sleep late or claim she had early meetings. I'd leave before dawn, spend 12 hours at the office, come home to find her already in bed or out at another event. We should take a vacation, I said once, catching her in the kitchen between her comings and goings. Get away somewhere. Reconnect. That sounds nice, she'd replied, not looking up from her phone. We should plan something. But we never did. Because planning required conversation, and conversation required honesty, and honesty would have shattered whatever illusion we were maintaining. I started noticing things, small things. The way she'd delete text messages immediately after reading them. The new lingerie that never made appearances in our bedroom. The perfume I didn't recognize. The fact that she stopped asking about my day, stopped pretending to care about quarterly reports or international expansions. How was work? I'd ask. Fine, she'd say. How was your day? Fine. Everything was fine. We were fine. Our marriage was fine. All of it fine and hollow and dying so slowly, I couldn't pinpoint the moment it actually ended. My assistant, Rebecca, noticed before I acknowledged it. She'd been with me since I took over the company, had seen me through acquisitions and near bankruptcies and everything in between. Boss, she said one afternoon, I don't mean to overstep, but are you okay? You seem distant lately. Just tired, I'd said. When's the last time you and Mrs. Carter did something together? Just the two of you? I'd had to think about it. Really think. Our anniversary dinner. 6 months ago. Rebecca had looked at me with something like pity. Maybe that's the problem. But it wasn't the problem. It was a symptom. The problem was that my wife had stopped loving me somewhere between the poetry and the promises, and I'd been too busy building empires to notice until the foundation crumbled. 3 weeks before the reunion, Natalie had received a phone call while we were having a rare dinner together. She'd glanced at the screen, excused herself, taken it in the other room. I'd heard her voice through the walls, animated, laughing, warm in a way it never was with me anymore. When she returned, her face was flushed. Sorry, that was an old friend, from college. Which friend? You wouldn't know him. Julian. We used to be in the same study group. Him. She'd said him so casually, like that detail meant nothing. Like I wouldn't file it away and remember it later when his resume appeared on my desk with the same graduation year, the same university. You should invite him to the reunion, I'd said, if he's such a good friend. Her fork had paused halfway to her mouth. What? The family reunion, in a few weeks. If he's important to you, he should meet everyone. I don't think that's necessary. I insist, I'd said, smiling. Any friend of yours is welcome at our family events. She'd agreed eventually, reluctantly, probably thinking she could control the narrative. Introduce him on her terms. Make it look innocent. Make me look paranoid if I questioned it. She didn't know I'd already seen the photographs. Already knew about apartment 12B. Already hired him and positioned him exactly where I wanted him, under my authority, in my world, playing my game without knowing the rules. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening, 2 days before the reunion. I'd told Natalie I had a late meeting, that I wouldn't be home until midnight. Instead, I'd parked across from 445 Parkside Avenue at 7 o'clock and waited. She arrived at 7:30, parking in the visitor spot, checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, reapplied lipstick. My lipstick, the expensive one I'd bought her in Paris. She wore a dress I'd never seen. Black, elegant, the kind of thing you wear when you want to be undressed. Julian met her at the entrance, kissed her. Not a friendly kiss, not a greeting. A kiss that said, "Welcome home." A kiss that said, "I've been waiting." A kiss that said, "We belong to each other." They disappeared into the building, hand in hand. I sat in my car for 3 hours, watched the lights come on in apartment 12B, watched shadows move behind curtains, imagined everything I didn't want to imagine. Her laughter, his hands, the way she probably said his name in darkness, the way she used to say mine. At 10:30, she emerged, hair slightly mussed, dress wrinkled, face glowing with the kind of satisfaction that had been absent from our bedroom for months. She got in her car and drove away. Probably went home, showered, put on pajamas, slid into bed beside me, and pretended she'd been at yoga. Pretended her muscles ached from stretching instead of betrayal. I didn't go home that night, checked into a hotel downtown, sat by the window looking at city lights, and made a decision. I could confront her quietly, file for divorce, split everything 50-50, watch her ride off into the sunset with Julian and whatever future they thought they were building. Or I could show her exactly what she'd chosen. Show both of them. Let them feel the weight of their choices in front of everyone who'd celebrated our marriage, believed in our love, thought we were the couple who'd make it. The reunion was perfect timing, a stage, an audience, a moment where truth couldn't hide behind closed doors and deleted messages. So I'd gone home the next morning, kissed Natalie goodbye like nothing was wrong, went to the office and finalized Julian's employment contract, then prepared for the performance of my life. The reunion dinner started at 8. Long tables set up in the garden, fairy lights strung through oak trees, the scent of jasmine and expensive wine mixing with old family stories. My grandmother sat at the head table, 89 years old and sharp as ever, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. Natalie and Julian were seated separately, her with the women, him with the junior family members and plus ones. I'd arranged the seating myself, told the coordinator it was about making guests feel welcome. Really, it was about making them uncomfortable. I sat between my grandmother and my Uncle Richard, positioning myself to watch both of them throughout the meal. Julian kept glancing at Natalie, his expression progressively more panicked as conversation at his table turned to company gossip. The man next to him, my cousin's husband, an attorney, was asking about his work at our company, about career prospects, about how he'd gotten hired. "Just lucky timing, I guess," Julian said, voice thin. "Lucky indeed. Liam's usually very selective about his hires. You must have impressed him." Across the garden, Natalie wasn't eating, just pushing food around her plate, draining wine glasses faster than the servers could refill them. My aunt tried to engage her in conversation about holiday plans, and she laughed at the wrong moments, answered questions no one had asked. "Your wife seems troubled," my grandmother said quietly. "Does she? Don't play coy with me, Liam. I changed your diapers. I know when you're plotting something." She sipped her wine, studying me. "That boy she brought, the one you seated 3 tables away, there's history there." "Yes. Recent history?" "Very." She nodded slowly. "And you're handling it by making him uncomfortable at a family dinner. I taught you better revenge than that." "I learned from the best." I met her eyes. "But this isn't revenge, grandmother. This is clarity." "Clarity." She turned the word over like a stone. "Clarity for whom? For her, for him? Or for yourself?" "All of us, I think. We've all been living in confusion. Tonight, everyone gets to see things clearly." Dessert was being served when Julian's phone rang. He excused himself, walked toward the garden's edge to take the call. I watched Natalie watch him leave, saw her pull out her own phone, type something quickly. His phone buzzed. He looked at it, looked back at her, his face drained of color. I stood, carrying my wine glass, and walked over to where he stood. "Everything all right, Julian?" He nearly dropped his phone. "Mr. Carter, yes, I was just... a friend needed something." A friend. I looked back at the dinner party, at Natalie, who was staring at us now, frozen. "You know, Julian, I've been thinking about your position at the company." "Oh?" "Yes. The temporary role isn't really utilizing your skills, is it? Marketing degree, consulting experience. You're wasted in analysis." Hope flickered across his face. Stupid, desperate hope. "I mean, if there's an opportunity..." "There isn't," I said quietly. "But I wanted you to know that your last day will be Monday. HR will have your termination papers ready first thing in the morning." The hope died. "What? Why? I haven't done anything." "You lied on your application. Failed to disclose a personal relationship with an employee's spouse that could constitute a conflict of interest. That's grounds for immediate termination." I took a sip of wine. "Of course, you could fight it, file a complaint, but that would require explaining the nature of your relationship with my wife to a room full of lawyers and HR representatives, with documentation, including the security footage from 445 Parkside Avenue that I've been collecting for the past month." His face went gray. "You've been watching? I've been informed. There's a difference." I smiled, and it felt like breaking glass. "Tell me, Julian, when Natalie said she'd leave me for you, did you believe her? Actually believe her? Or did you know deep down that she was just using you to feel wanted, to feel young, to feel anything other than the guilt of marrying someone for their potential and being disappointed when potential became reality? You don't know anything about us. I know she never told you who I was, never warned you that applying to my company would end exactly like this, never thought far enough ahead to protect you because you weren't important enough to protect. I set my wine glass on a nearby table. I know that when she brought you here tonight, she thought she could control the situation, thought she could introduce you as a friend, and I'd swallow the lie like I've been swallowing all her other lies. But what she didn't account for was that I stopped playing her game 3 weeks ago when I hired you. She didn't know I applied. Exactly. Because you two don't talk about real things. You don't build futures together. You just fill empty hours with each other's bodies and call it connection. I leaned in slightly. You want to know the saddest part? She probably did care about you. In her way. The way lonely people care about the first person who makes them feel less alone. But that's not love, Julian. That's just convenience with emotion. He looked like he might be sick. What do you want from me? Nothing anymore. I wanted you to understand what you were part of. Now you do. I straightened. Enjoy the rest of dinner. The dessert is excellent. My grandmother's recipe. I walked away, back to my seat, leaving him standing there in the garden like a ghost at his own funeral. Natalie met me at the table. What did you say to him? The truth. You should try it sometime. Liam, please, her voice cracked. Can we just go? I can't do this anymore. Neither can I said. That's the point. I excused myself from the table, from the dinner, from the entire performance. Drove home alone, unlocked the door to our house. My house, really, I'd bought it before the marriage, and started packing her things, methodically, carefully. Everything that was hers went into boxes. Clothes, books, jewelry, photos. 7 years of shared life reduced to cardboard and tape. I left out only one thing, her wedding ring, which she'd stopped wearing at home months ago, claiming it caught on things. I placed it on the kitchen counter next to a manila envelope. Inside the envelope, divorce papers, already filed and processed. Security footage screenshots from apartment 12B. Bank statements showing the credit card I'd never seen bills for, the one she'd opened in her maiden name, the one she used for dinners and hotels and gifts for Julian. I'd been planning this for 2 weeks, had my lawyers draft everything, had investigators compile evidence, had contingencies for every possible response. The only thing I hadn't planned for was how empty it would feel. How quiet the house was without her lies filling the space. How much it hurt to let go of who I thought she was. I poured myself scotch, the expensive bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat in the living room, surrounded by boxes of her life, waiting for her to come home. She arrived just after midnight. Alone. I heard her car in the driveway, her heels on the walkway, her key in the lock. She stopped in the foyer, seeing the boxes, seeing me on the couch. Liam, your things are packed. I've arranged for a moving service to collect them tomorrow. You can stay at a hotel tonight, or with Julian, or wherever you want. But you can't stay here. She moved toward me, and I held up a hand. Don't. We're past the part where you explain or apologize or make promises you won't keep. I was going to end it, she said, voice small. After tonight, I was going to tell him it was over and come home and fix this. Fix us. There is no us to fix. There hasn't been for months, maybe longer. I stood facing her across the room that used to feel like ours. You want to know when I knew it was really over? Not when I saw the photographs, not when I hired Julian, but tonight, at dinner, when I watched you watch him, and realized you looked more worried about him being uncomfortable than you ever looked about me being unhappy. Tears tracked mascara down her cheeks. I do love you. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of me, the life we built, the security, the house and the name and the status. But me? The actual person I am? You stopped seeing that a long time ago, if you ever really did. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, bitter and broken. You brought the man you've been sleeping with to our family reunion. You wore the dress I bought you, and the perfume he likes, and you smiled at my grandmother like nothing was wrong. And when I called him my employee, which he is, you panicked because your two worlds collided and you realized you couldn't control both narratives. That's what's not fair. She sank onto the stairs, face in her hands. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I want you to take your things and leave. I want you to sign the papers and split everything down the middle and move on with whatever life you think you're going to have with Julian. I picked up my scotch glass. And I want you to remember, years from now, when you're wondering what went wrong, that you had someone who loved you completely, who worked himself sick to build you a life worth living, who would have given you anything, and you traded it all for Tuesday and Thursday evenings in someone else's apartment. He made me feel alive. Then go be alive with him. I walked past her toward the stairs. But do it somewhere else. This is my house, my life, and I'm done sharing it with someone who never wanted to be in it. I went upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and lay in bed listening to her cry, listening to her move through the house, making phone calls, probably to Julian, probably asking him to come get her, listening to her eventually leave, the front door closing with a finality that felt like the end of everything. The house was mine again. Quiet. Empty. Exactly what I'd wanted. It felt like death. The weeks that followed were mechanical. I worked, slept, worked more. Avoided places we used to go together. Stopped drinking scotch because the taste reminded me of that night. Stopped listening to the radio because every song felt like it was written about us. Julian's termination went through without issue. He didn't fight it, didn't file complaints, just took his severance and disappeared from my world as quickly as he'd entered it. Natalie stayed with her sister initially, then moved into a downtown apartment. Her lawyer contacted mine. We negotiated the divorce with the romance of a business transaction, asset division, property rights, spousal support calculations. She wanted the house. I refused. She wanted half my company shares. I offered cash equivalent instead. She wanted the art collection we'd built together. I let her have it. Anything to be done faster. To stop having her name appear in my email inbox. To stop seeing her signature on documents that used to say love, and now just said petitioner and respondent. My family called, checking in. My grandmother invited me to Sunday dinners. My aunt sent care packages. Everyone had advice about healing, about moving forward, about how I'd find someone better. But I didn't want someone better. I wanted to stop wanting anything at all. 3 months after the reunion, I was working late when Rebecca knocked on my office door. "Boss, you have a visitor." "I'm not seeing anyone. I think you'll want to see this." She stepped aside, and Julian walked in. He looked different, thinner, tired, like someone who'd been hollowed out and poorly refilled. "What do you want?" I asked, not standing, not welcoming him past the threshold. "To apologize." "Apology noted. You can leave." "Please, just hear me out." He moved into the room, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. "You were right. About everything. About Natalie using me. About us not having anything real. About all of it. Congratulations on your clarity. Now get out of my office." She's been calling me, he continued, like I hadn't spoken. Ever since the divorce finalized, saying she made a mistake, that she wants to try again with me, that we can be together properly now without hiding. I looked up from my computer. And I told her no. He laughed, hollow and hurt. Because I finally understood what you were trying to show me that night. She doesn't love me. She doesn't love you. She just loves the idea of being loved, of being chosen, of mattering to someone. And the second that's threatened, she'll find someone new to make her feel important. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better than what she gave you. And because, he paused, struggling. Because I've been where you are. Had someone cheat on me, watched them move on like our years together meant nothing. And when it happened, I told myself I'd never do that to someone else. That I'd never be the other man. But then I met Natalie and she was beautiful and sad, and she made me feel like I could save her from something. And I forgot my own promises. You want absolution? No. I want you to know that some of us learn. Some of us become better. And I know it doesn't fix what I did, doesn't undo the damage, but I'm trying to be someone who wouldn't make those choices again. He turned toward the door. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter, for all of it. He left. I sat in my office, staring at the skyline, thinking about apologies and what they mean. Thinking about Julian's face at the reunion, the way it had crumpled when he realized he was just a prop in someone else's drama. I didn't forgive him, but I understood him. And that felt like progress. 6 months after the divorce, Natalie called me directly. Liam, please don't hang up. I considered it, finger hovering over the red button, but curiosity won. What do you want? To talk. To explain, to hear your voice. You're hearing it. Say what you need to say. Static on the line, her breathing. Then, I'm seeing someone, a therapist. She's been helping me understand why I did what I did, why I sabotaged us. That's good for you. She says I was afraid of being happy. That when things were good with you, I'd panic because I didn't trust it to last, so I'd create chaos to feel like I had control. Natalie, I don't need your therapy revelations. I'm pregnant. The words hit like stones. I sat down, gripping the phone. What? Not yours. Julian's. From before. From before you found out. Before everything fell apart. Her voice cracked. He doesn't want it. Told me to handle it however I want. And I realized I'm going to be raising a child alone because I destroyed the only relationship that ever actually mattered. I didn't say anything. Couldn't find words. I'm not calling to ask you back, she continued. I know that's impossible. I know what I did is unforgivable. I wanted you to know that you were right. About Julian, about me, about all of it, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Good luck with the baby, I said quietly. I hope you figure out how to love it better than you loved us. I hung up. Sat in the silence of my apartment. I'd sold the house, bought a penthouse downtown, started over with furniture that held no memories. Sat there and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not because she was suffering, but because I was finally completely free of her. The last thread of what if or maybe someday snapped clean, and I could breathe again. A year after the reunion, I met someone at a charity auction. Her name was Diana. She worked in architecture, and when I told her I was divorced, she said, "Good. Then you know what not to do next time." We dated slowly, carefully. I didn't talk about Natalie except to explain the timeline, the basics. Diana didn't push for more. Didn't need to know every detail of my damage to understand that I had some. "You know what I like about you?" she said once, over dinner at a restaurant I'd never been to with Natalie. "What?" "You're present. When we're together, you're actually here. Not checking your phone, not thinking about work, not disappearing into your head. Just here." "Is that unusual?" "In my experience, very," she smiled. "Whatever happened in your past, it taught you how to show up. That's rare." I thought about Natalie's complaint that I'd made her feel invisible. Realized that maybe I had, not through neglect, but through assumption. I'd assumed she'd always be there, that love was a constant that didn't require maintenance. I'd built empires while letting my foundation crack. With Diana, I built differently. We had standing dinner dates, weekend trips with no work emails, conversations about real things, fears, hopes, the small daily failures that make us human. When I told her about the reunion, about hiring Julian, about the whole calculated revenge, she listened without judgment. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Handling it that way?" "Sometimes. It was cruel." "It was honest. You showed them what they were doing instead of just telling them. That's not cruelty. That's clarity." She took my hand across the table. "And from what you've told me, it sounds like you gave her a lot of chances to come clean. A lot of opportunities to choose you. She just kept choosing herself." "Yeah," I said. "She did." "Then you did what you had to do to protect yourself. Nothing wrong with that." Natalie's baby was born in spring. I knew because my grandmother told me. She'd stayed in touch with Natalie's family, maintained those connections despite the divorce. The baby was a girl. Natalie named her Sophie. Was raising her alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, working at a gallery again, trying to rebuild. "Do you want to know more?" my grandmother asked. "No," I said. "I hope she's well. I hope the baby's healthy. But it's not my life anymore." "Good boy," grandmother said. "Knowing when to let go is the hardest lesson. You learned it younger than I did." 2 years after the reunion, Diana and I got engaged. Simple proposal. No grand gestures. Just a Saturday morning in our apartment, coffee on the balcony, the ring I'd been carrying for weeks finally coming out of my pocket. "I know I'm not perfect," I said. "I work too much sometimes. I get in my head. I have trust issues wrapped in scar tissue. But I love you. And I want to build something real with you. Something that lasts." "Yes," she said, before I even finished. "Obviously, yes." We married in fall. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Diana wore a simple dress and wildflowers in her hair. Her choice, no echoes of anyone else. And looked at me like I was the only future she needed. And this time, I believed it. Because she'd spent 2 years showing me she meant it. 2 years of choosing us every single day. 2 years of being present, honest, imperfect, and real. Standing at the altar, watching her walk toward me, I thought about that rainy day in the bookstore. About young Liam who'd fallen in love with poetry and promises. About how much he'd had to lose before he could learn what love actually meant. It wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It wasn't about building empires or being impressive. It was about showing up, being present, choosing each other even when it was difficult, especially when it was difficult. Natalie had taught me what love wasn't. Diana was teaching me what it could be. 3 years after the reunion, I got a letter. Handwritten, forwarded through my attorney. Natalie's handwriting, still familiar after all this time. I almost threw it away, but Diana said, "Read it. You might need the closure." So I did. The letter was long. Pages of apologies, explanations, updates about her life. Sophie was thriving. Natalie was in a better place mentally, had learned to be alone, to find worth in herself instead of in other people's validation. She'd seen the announcement of my marriage in the society pages. Congratulated me. Said Diana looked beautiful, that we looked happy together, that she hoped I'd found what I deserved. The last paragraph made me pause. I've spent 3 years trying to understand what happened between us. Why I destroyed something good. My therapist says I was carrying damage from my childhood, patterns I didn't recognize until it was too late. But that's not an excuse. You deserved better. You deserved someone who could see what she had and protect it. I couldn't be that person then. Maybe I can now. Maybe Sophie will teach me. All I know is that I'm sorry, and you were right about everything, and I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for my sake, for yours, so you can let it go completely. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer, closed it. Maybe I'd read it again someday. Maybe I wouldn't. What did it say? Diana asked. That she's sorry, that she understands now. Do you forgive her? I thought about it. Really thought. I don't know. I don't hate her anymore. Don't wish her harm. But forgiveness feels like something I'm not sure I have to give. Like she's asking for closure that's not mine to provide. Then don't give it. You don't owe her anything. I know. But part of me wonders if holding on to it hurts me more than her. Diana kissed my temple. Then let it go. Not for her, for you. Because you've built something beautiful, and she's just a story you tell now. A chapter that taught you something. But not the whole book. She was right. Natalie was becoming a story. The details already fuzzing at the edges. The pain becoming something I could examine from a distance, like an old scar that doesn't hurt anymore but reminds you to be careful. I burned the letter that night. Watched it turn to ash in our fireplace. Smoke curling toward the ceiling. Felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. She'd existed. We'd existed. It had ended. And I was okay. 5 years after the reunion, I saw her in passing. A coffee shop downtown. She was with Sophie, now a toddler with curls like her mother's. They were laughing about something, sharing a muffin, oblivious to the world around them. I almost left without her seeing me. But Sophie dropped her cup, and I instinctively moved to help. Picked it up, handed it back. "Thank you," Natalie said. Then recognized me. "Liam." "Natalie." Awkward silence. Sophie looked between us, sensing tension she couldn't name. "This is Sophie," Natalie said quietly. "Sophie, this is an old friend of Mama's." "Hi," Sophie said, shy, but smiling. "Hi, Sophie. That's a beautiful name." "It means wisdom," Sophie said proudly. "Mama says I'm wise for my age." "I bet you are." Natalie's eyes were wet. "You look good. Happy." "I am. You?" "Better. Not there yet, but better." She paused. "I saw your company went international. Congratulations." "Thank you." Another silence. Sophie tugged on Natalie's hand, wanting to leave. Natalie looked at me one more time, like she wanted to say something important, then just, "Take care of yourself, Liam." "You too." I watched them walk away. Mother and daughter. A future I'd never be part of. And I felt nothing but quiet gratitude that I wasn't. That night I told Diana about the encounter. She listened, then asked, "How did it feel?" "Like seeing someone I used to know? Like she's become someone else. Or maybe I have, and we don't exist in the same world anymore." "That's growth," Diana said. "That's you being healed." 7 years after the reunion, 7 years almost to the day, I attended another family gathering at the Grand Oak Estate. But this time, Diana was beside me. This time, there were no surprises, no betrayals, no performances. My grandmother pulled me aside near the fountain where I'd once confronted Julian. "You've done well," she said. "Better than I expected after everything. I had good teachers. You had good pain, the kind that teaches if you let it." She looked at Diana, who was laughing with my cousins. "She's nothing like her." "I know. Is that why you chose her?" "No. I chose her because she's exactly herself. No games, no performances, just Diana, every day, consistently. It's terrifying and wonderful." Grandmother smiled. "That's love, boy. The real kind. The kind that shows up even when it's boring. Especially when it's boring." I thought about Natalie and Julian, about the excitement they'd thought was love, about how quickly excitement fades when reality sets in. Thought about Tuesday and Thursday evenings that had felt so important, but were just borrowed time. Stolen moments that cost everything and meant nothing. Then I looked at Diana, at the life we'd built from honest foundation stones, at the future we were planning one mundane day at a time. "Yeah," I told my grandmother. "That's love." The reunion ended late. Diana and I drove home through quiet streets, her hand in mine, talking about normal things, work stress, weekend plans, whether to get a dog. "Are you glad we came?" she asked. "Yeah. First time I've been back here since that night. And it's just a place. No ghosts, no power over me." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you for coming with me." Where else would I be? Exactly, I thought. Where else? We got home, changed into comfortable clothes, settled on the couch with wine and terrible television. Diana fell asleep against my shoulder. I stayed awake, watching her breathe, feeling grateful for boring Tuesdays and quiet Thursdays, and every unremarkable moment in between. Somewhere across the city, Natalie was probably putting Sophie to bed, reading her stories, teaching her about wisdom and strength and how to be better than her mother once was. Somewhere else, Julian was probably building a life, too, learning from his mistakes. Maybe becoming someone who wouldn't make them again. And here I was, in my home, with my wife, having learned that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about showing up, being present, choosing each other even when excitement fades. Especially then. I thought about young Liam in that bookstore, falling in love with poetry and promises. Thought about how much he'd had to lose before he could understand what he'd been looking for all along. Not someone to save, not someone to impress, just someone to be with. Honestly, imperfectly, completely. Diana stirred, mumbled something about the show we were watching. I kissed her forehead, turned off the TV, carried her to bed. She curled into my side like she always did. "Love you," she said, half asleep. "Love you too," I said, and meant it with a certainty I'd never felt before. Outside, the city hummed its nightly song. Inside, everything was quiet and right and exactly as it should be. She once wore my love like a trophy that lost its shine. Now it's her ghost at every family gathering, while I hold something real,